OpenAI's amazing new graphics overshadow Google's Gemini 2.5 launch. Europe looks to move away from U.S. cloud providers. OpenAI's Hane says the U.S. must relax AI rules to compete with China. And HP quietly settles a class action printer lawsuit and allows third-party ink again. Welcome to Hashtag Trending. I'm your host, Jim Love. Let's get into it. If you are working in marketing at Google, you might be screaming in frustration. Last year in December, Google made some significant upgrades to their Gemini models, only to find that OpenAI scooped them with an incredible 12 days of announcements. Well, they did it again. Just as reviewers and influencers were starting to review Gemini's new model and saying how impressive it was, OpenAI struck again. It was a quick announcement of a live cast, but the announcement was, and I want to stop here when I say this because it's easy to sound like it's hyper-exaggeration, but OpenAI's announcement, or at least what they presented, was simply friggin' astonishing. With Altman leading a team of developers, OpenAI revealed their enhancements to image generation. There are lots of new features. It produces realistic images from photos and even selfies and lets you manipulate these images with text prompts. In their live example, the group, including Altman, snapped a selfie on a phone. The AI replicated them realistically with none of the usual issues that we've all complained about, right down to specific hand gestures. They then displayed how you could then edit it and manipulate these images from changing the backgrounds all the way to turning them into anime characters, which capture the essence and the look in a way that matched anything done by a graphic artist. And while all of these will provide endless possibilities for creating and manipulating images, the new features solved some technical issues that have plagued image generation. If you use ChatGPT a lot, you've undoubtedly asked it for a picture only to find out it gives you something that is nothing like what you asked for. This new version is uncanny in its ability to interpret and provide graphics that are faithful to your request. But also, at least in the demos, it solved so many problems and frustrations that we all have. For instance, it could keep a consistent and photorealistic view of an object and allow you to remove and change the background. But it goes further than that. Another frustration that I've had is when we find an image, but we want to make a change to it, putting a hat on or changing what the person is wearing, you get a totally new person, totally different looking image. And now, at least in the demos, the new version kept the earlier base image consistent and made the changes. And for those who use this in marketing, one of the biggest frustrations of all has to be that anytime there's text on a picture, and they seem to insist on putting text into pictures even when you don't ask for it, the AI just can't spell and consistently makes mistakes with the text. You could prompt all you want, but you'll never fix it. This new version is letter perfect. And this is not from the demo. I was able to use it myself and edit text with 100% accuracy. I asked it to change the date on my thumbnail. It edited just those words perfectly. But there's more. As Sam Altman pointed out, although they'll try to prevent extremes, they've relaxed a lot of the restrictions to allow people to have fun with images. I asked ChatGPT to produce a picture of Elmo in Times Square riding a unicycle and giving the finger to tourists. The AI said it couldn't create Elmo because it was a copyrighted character, but it did offer to and did produce an Elmo look-alike and followed all other directions, including having the right digit used for my rude salute to tourists. As a musician, I couldn't resist having photos done of my concert with Elvis. I also beat Donald Trump at a round of golf. There don't seem to be a lot of restrictions. With this precision, however, there is a huge reduction in speed. My unscientific guess is that it takes 3 to 4 times longer to render an image. And there may also be some problems with availability, especially over the next few days. There were a number of times when it just failed to produce an image due to technical issues. You really have to see it and believe that it's possible. And you can do that even with the free edition. Check it out and have a little sympathy for Google's marketing people. European countries are starting to look at the potential of shifting away from cloud services provided by big U.S. tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. The reason? Growing concerns over data privacy, control, and, of course, political tensions. In the Netherlands, lawmakers have called on the governments to reduce its use of U.S.-based software and cloud platforms. They really want to build a Dutch-controlled cloud system and use more European-made software. One proposal even suggests moving the country's internet domain off Amazon Web Services. This isn't just an issue for the Dutch. Across Europe, the idea of digital sovereignty is gaining ground. Countries want more control over where their data lives and who has access to it. There's a growing concern that U.S. companies could be forced to share user data with American authorities. One major European effort is Gaia X, a cloud project started by Germany and France to create a shared, secure cloud system run by European companies. It's backed by firms like Deutsche Telekom and OVH Cloud. Smaller European providers say they're already seeing more interest. Companies like Exoscale and Elastics are getting calls from customers who want alternatives to U.S. providers, especially those that align better with Europe's strict privacy laws. Joachim Aumann, CEO of Elastic, summed up the mood in Europe when he said, "It's a big worry about the uncertainty about everything." And from the Europeans' perspective, the U.S. is maybe not on the same team as us any longer. Matthias Neubayer, the CEO of Swiss-based hosting provider Exoscale, also noted, "Some customers were very explicit, especially customers from Denmark being very explicit that they wanted to move away from U.S. hyperscalers because of the U.S. administration and what they said about Greenland." And for those who missed it, President Trump has indicated that he intends to take over Greenland one way or another. This has left American companies scrambling to respond. An AWS spokesperson tried to refute the idea that there would be any loss of data control using their cloud services. They pointed out that users can encrypt their data and that AWS has no access to the encryption keys, so they can't turn them over. What they didn't address is what would happen in a conflict if access to services were to be interrupted or restricted. At any other time in history, such an idea might seem extreme or even fanciful. But Elon Musk has openly speculated he might stop Starlink service to Canadian customers due to his dispute with a Canadian province that stopped providing subsidies for his Tesla accessories. Whether the concerns are real or exaggerated, the reality remains that replacing U.S. hyperscalers would be no small feat. U.S. tech companies are deeply embedded and offer services at massive scale in Europe and around the world. But for many in Europe, the push for more secure and locally controlled digital infrastructure is definitely an idea that's gaining traction with legislators, companies, and citizens. OpenAI's policy chief, Chris Hane, says the U.S. is in a high-stakes race with China over artificial intelligence and risks losing it if it imposes tighter restrictions on AI developers. Speaking at the Axios What's Next Summit in Washington, Hane warned that limitations on the use of copyrighted material for training AI could leave the U.S. at a strategic disadvantage. Whoever ends up winning ends up building the AI rails for the world, Hane said. He argued that China is not bound by the same intellectual property laws and that the U.S. should ensure its own companies can stay competitive under a principle of fair use. OpenAI is pushing for U.S. policy that would explicitly allow AI companies to train on publicly available data, even if it includes copyrighted content, calling it a matter of national security. Hane said there are already laws in place to govern AI use and that companies like OpenAI are acting responsibly by aligning with public concerns like protecting children, identifying AI-generated content, and limiting deep fakes. OpenAI has also signed licensing deals with media organizations including the Associated Press, Axel Springer, and Axios. Hane emphasized that OpenAI supports fair compensation, but that over-regulation could stall U.S. leadership in AI innovation. When pressed on whether OpenAI trains its models on copyrighted material, Hane replied that the company uses data that is appropriately accessible and available, a phrase commonly used in the industry to cover broad web scraping practices. He then pivoted back to China, asking, "Do you want the world built on an autocratic, authoritarian AI where you're not going to have any fair use and any freedoms?" HP has agreed to settle a class action lawsuit accusing the company of disabling printers that used third-party ink cartridges. You might remember this from a story we did earlier. The lawsuit focused on HP's dynamic security firmware, which blocked cartridges that lacked HP's proprietary chips, effectively forcing users to buy more expensive HP-branded ink for their printers. As part of the settlement, HP will pay about $720,000 in legal costs and roughly $5,000 to the lead plaintiff. HP did not admit wrongdoing and is not providing financial compensation to customers affected by the cartridge blocks. The company said the firmware was intended to protect customers from counterfeit products and ensure print quality. However, under the terms of the settlement, HP has agreed to let users opt out of the dynamic security updates going forward. That means customers will be allowed to use compatible third-party cartridges without interference if they choose to decline future firmware updates. The case highlights a long-running dispute in the printer industry over the right to use non-OEM or original equipment manufacturer supplies. Critics say updates like HP's reduce consumer choice and drive up the cost of printer ownership. And on that idea of not taking firmware updates being the solution to this problem, those of you who might listen to our other show, Cybersecurity Today, will have known that devices, particularly printers and cameras, are now the point of focus for hackers. Not getting the firmware updates means not getting the protection from new security updates as well. HP giveth, HP taketh away. And that's our show for today. I have to say, I had to tear myself away from playing with OpenAI's graphics. I wasn't kidding when I said I found it astounding. It was also great fun. I did have some struggles, though, trying to fine-tune the placement of text in these pictures. So there are some issues that will need to be fixed before this becomes a go-to tool for marketers. But it's still an incredibly important development and an incredibly useful tool. Love to know what you think about it. Reach me at editorial@technewsday.ca or in the comments on YouTube. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a thrilling Thursday.